Hello YouTube. Bane 666 here. Welcome to Propaganda of Toxic Feminism, the series in which I expose and debunk falsehoods, misconceptions, and outright lies spread about the men's rights movement. So let's get stuck into it. So you may remember that in part 35 of this series, I discussed a tweet from Laurie concerning an individual named Peter Andrew Nolan copyrighted. And yes, you did hear that correctly, I did say copyrighted, because he has in fact copyrighted his own name. If you haven't seen part 35, I would recommend you go watch it before watching this episode. Anyway, Peter Andrew Nolan copyrighted has responded to me with an hour and 16-minute long video, which I will now go through and pull apart. I'll try to get through as much of it as possible, but as I'm keeping these videos under an hour, just in case I ever need to back them up on Daily Motion, I obviously won't be able to respond to it all. If however you want me to respond to the rest of Pete's video in a future episode, please say so in the comments section below. Or if you think I've covered this topic enough, and want me to go on to the long list of other things waiting to be explored in this series, then once again please say so below. In other words, I'll leave it up to you guys, as to whether we see more Peter Andrew Nolan copyrighted, or move on. Personally, I'm easy either way. But let's get stuck into Pete's video and see exactly what he has to say about me.
Hello and welcome to this video. I haven't made so many videos like this of late, mostly because there's no reason to. I believe I've said everything that I need to say, and I'm moving on and doing what it is that I'm doing, most of which I'm not telling people about. I mean, everybody knows I'm running my internet marketing business, but that's about the extent of it. So what's this video about? Well, some guy who runs a channel called Bane 666, who's got a bunch of subs, I don't know, I've never heard of him before, has done a video about me. So I thought I would just, one, do a short response up front to him, but also fill things out a little bit because he's obviously a very ignorant man. Bane 666 is either a very ignorant man or an NSA, CSA, PSYOP agent.
Oh no, my cover has been blown. Operation Poison Kool-Aid has been exposed. My superiors in Washington aren't going to be happy about this. Curse you Peter Andrew Nolan copyrighted, curse you for blowing my cover. At least Dr. Random Akem's cover hasn't been blown. Shit, did I just blow Dr. Random Akem's cover? Shit. I'm in so much trouble now. This is all just a joke, please ignore it. Next.
One of the two. And, you know, one would ask the question, does it really matter which?
Fucking oath it does. If I have been working for the American government as a secret agent all this time, I haven't been getting paid for it. So the way I figure it, they owe me a lot of back pay. Does the Black Ops Illuminati-controlled CIA secret branch have a good union? Because I'm going to have to contact someone first thing Monday morning. Next. So
he's, the first thing I would put in a stake in the ground is Bane 666 is ignorant, he's a liar, and he's very possibly a CIA plant. So, NSA plant. So, you know, time will tell. We shall see.
You've got to wonder, if I am a CIA plant, then what exactly would my goals be? To outlaw male circumcision? To get rid of the gender sentencing gap? To fight for fathers' rights? To tackle male suicide? To spread awareness of the male homelessness issue? To expose feminist bullshit? Is an undercover CIA agent working on YouTube really the best option if the CIA wanted to tackle these issues? And why would the CIA tackle these issues? Why would they care? Of course, what Paranoid Pete really means is anyone who is seen as criticizing him must be part of a massive government-led plot to discredit him. Sadly, what Pete doesn't understand is that he actually discredits himself every time he opens his own mouth. If he's not threatening to kill women, Then he's going on about secret government agents out to get him. I hate to tell you this, Pete, but you really aren't that important. In fact, if some dishonest feminist hadn't tried, repeatedly, to associate your brand of crazy with the men's rights movement, I doubt I'd have ever mentioned you. It's really that simple. Next.
In the drop-down box and also on the this will be on Manbook. So if you're watching this on Manbook, in the comments down below, if you're watching this on YouTube, in the drop-down box, I'll leave a link to his hour-long diatribe of lies about me.
Which is kind of funny, as I included at least 10 minutes of video footage from Pete, as well as looking at a couple of his articles. I'm guessing Pete didn't bother watching the entire video. Next.
And, fine. Now, the first thing to recognize on the video is this presumably man, Bane 666, comes out and he quotes a woman saying, I don't know what her name is and I really don't care.
Her name is Laurie Penny. She's a feminist and, apparently, what passes as a journalist these days. She's also possibly a CIA plant like everyone else. Next.
A woman saying the leaders of the MRA are now calling for women to be killed. And this was also a lie, and it's a false claim based on my statements of late around the fact, and it is a fact, so I can say it, that the only way to a path to justice for men now is by killing women. And I'm quite happy to say that because it's true.
And it's exactly because of statements like that we distance ourselves from Crazy Pete. Next.
Now, of course, me saying that has ruffled a few feathers, not the least of which is the feathers of liars like David Futrell. I mean, the guy's a pathological liar who lies for a living just to try and get some female attention.
For the most part, I agree with this. Next.
And that's about the most pathetic reason to be a liar of all. But we all know that lots of men will lie about other men and throw other men under the bus merely to try and get just a little bit of attention from a woman. And
for the most part, I agree with this. Next.
And we all know that, and that's fine. So Bane opened up his hour-long diatribe,
which included at least 10 minutes of video from Crazy Pete,
about this woman says the MRA leaders are calling for the killing of women. Well, it's obviously false, of no such thing, and Bane spent quite some time demonstrating from my own writing and my own videos that, one, I'm not an MRA, I've never called myself an MRA, I don't claim to be an MRA, and for sure as hell I'm not a leader of any MRAs, right?
Oh, okay then, it seems we are on the same page. Which makes me wonder why Crazy Pete has made this video response claiming I'm a CIA agent. Next.
So anything that I say, trying to be attributed as an MRA or a leader of MRAs is patently ridiculous.
I agree 100%. Next.
And it's no less patently ridiculous than the effort to paint Elliot Rodger as an MRA. I mean, the effort to paint Elliot Rodger as an MRA was ridiculous and ludicrous. The effort to paint me as a leader of MRAs is just as ludicrous and ridiculous.
I agree 100%. Next.
Right? So, first of all, full credit to Bane for rejecting that ridiculous, pathologically lying statement, because it is a pathologically lying statement. She knows I'm not a leader of any MRA movement.
I'm going to have to disagree with Pete here. In fact, Laurie Penny refers to Peter Andrew Nolan, copyrighted as Paul Nolan, in a couple of tweets. If I were to speculate, I think she may have gotten Pete mixed up with Paul Elam. Once again, let me stress, Laurie Penny is meant to be a journalist. Sadly, this is what journalism has become. So I don't think she was purposefully spreading false information. I think it's safer to assume she is just incredibly lazy and ignorant, and clearly should not be paid to do journalism. Next.
And she knows I'm not a leader of MRAs, but she told the lie anyway. and that's fine.
Actually, no, it's not fine. Someone who is paid to be a journalist, and has a public following, should be more careful with getting her facts correct. Even if it's just a tweet on Twitter. Next.
But the really interesting thing about Bane's video is he then went on to quote from Al Martin on A Voice for Manginas. And he basically quoted Al Martin's A Voice for Manginas article verbatim as if it was true.
There were 3 things I wanted to document in my video. The first was 1. The mainstream of the men's rights movement's attitude towards Peter Andrew Nolan copyrighted. I did this with the AVFM article and the Men's Rights Sydney article. Whether these articles were 100% correct, or 100% false, in their assessment of Peter Nolan is totally irrelevant, as I was establishing the MRM's attitude towards Nolan, to demonstrate he is not even an MRA, let alone an MRM leader. The second thing I wanted to document was feminists' mischaracterization of Peter Nolan as an MRA, and how this is used to demonize and hurt the movement. Once again, establishing the feminist point of view doesn't mean I actively endorse it. And thirdly, I wanted to document Peter Andrew Nolan's opinion of the MRM, to show that not only does he not call himself an MRA, but he actively denounces us. Once again, establishing Nolan's point of view doesn't mean I actively endorse it. So even if the AVFM and Men's Rights Sydney articles were proven 100% false, and I totally disagreed with their content, I still would have used them as they established the mainstream MRM's opinion of Nolan. But for the record, I think they are pretty accurate, and I base this off what I've read and watched of Nolan himself. This video I'm replying to is the perfect example, where he speculates that I'm a CIA plant. I mean, for fuck's sake, Pete, how is anyone really meant to take your paranoid arse seriously? Next.
Right? This is a really funny thing. The guy just spent about, 4 or 5 minutes saying this statement by this woman is false, it's blatantly false, here's evidence that it's false, and we don't like being lied about, us men in the MRA area. And apparently, I hadn't met him before, I'd never heard of him, never heard of his channel, so obviously he's not important, right? He hasn't said anything important yet. And the only reason that I heard about him is someone sent me a note saying, hey, did you see this turkey's telling a bunch of lies about you? And I went, oh yeah, well, what else is new? Some guy's telling lies about me. So I went onto the link and, this guy's got like 7,000 subs or something. He's got 7,000 views. I'll actually listen to this. If somebody's got a lot of subs and he's telling lies about me, then I might as well listen to it, because I can rebut them and just demonstrate what a liar this guy is.
By claiming I'm working for the CIA. Good strategy, Pete. Good strategy. Next.
So I went over and had a look, and it was hysterical. The whole video was quite hysterical. So he spends 4 or 5 minutes, saying we don't like being lied about, and this is a blatant lie. And Peter Nolan or Joshua Bone, I prefer Joshua Bone. Peter Nolan or Joshua Bone is not an MRA. He says he's not an MRA. Nobody says he's an MRA, not even himself. He's no leader in the MRA, and yet you're lying about us, and we don't like that, right? Spends a whole bunch of time saying that, and then turns around, turns around and quotes Al Martin verbatim in a slanderous article, top to bottom, and
which demonstrates the men's rights movement's attitude towards Crazy Pete. Just claiming Pete isn't an MRA isn't enough. I like to actually demonstrate my claims by presenting evidence. Next.
Well, see, this is okay. Repeating a slanderous article top to bottom like it's true, that's okay. Right? Now, one thing I would like to say is, no, I'm not an MRA, right? Don't identify as an MRA. Don't want to identify as an MRA. Don't want to lead MRAs, right? None of that. I do have a lot of sites for men's rights, right? I have put up 7 or 8 sites for men's rights. I am a life member of Men's Rights Fiji. I did write the proposal to the Fiji government on behalf of Men's Rights Fiji as to how Men's Rights Fiji wants to move forward. We do have now a member of parliament in Fiji. We do have a number of ex-members of parliament who are members of Men's Rights Fiji. So I am indeed a life member of Men's Rights Fiji, and they welcome me. But I don't count myself as a men's rights activist, right? I don't label myself like that. And anybody's willing to lie about me, but I don't label myself like that. I don't care about, when somebody's rights are violated, I don't care about their genitalia. I don't care about how old they are. I don't say, well, children's rights are more important than adults' rights, or women's rights are more important than men's rights, or gay rights are more important than somebody else's rights, or LGBT alphabet rights are more important than somebody else's rights. People, human beings, we have rights, right? They are inalienable and they are endowed on us by that which created us. And I don't distinguish amongst the individual person, which is why I reject the title or label of men's rights activist, because I've got a site called Crimes Against Women and Children, right? I actually own a site and run a site called Crimes Against Women and Children. Nobody uses it, right? Because women and children don't have any problems getting the violations of their rights resolved. But I got accused of being sexist so often for running Crimes Against Fathers. I said, okay, I will set up a website and I'll call it Crimes Against Women and Children, and I'll do exactly the same for Crimes Against Women and Children as I'm doing for Crimes Against Fathers, right? And nobody's ever put a post in it, okay? Nobody's ever put a post in it. And that was, that's obviously also somehow my fault that nobody else has put a post in it, right? So I don't see the rights violation of fathers, the rights violations of men, as being any different as the rights violation of children or the rights violations of women. But women and children, when their rights are violated, heaven and earth is moved to resolve that situation in general, right? It's only men's rights that can be violated with complete impunity.
I'd actually agree with Pete on this. Unfortunately, Pete's actions are making it harder for us to address this issue. And for the record, that wasn't me in the background. He just looked a little bit like me, that's all. Next.
Okay, there seemed to be a bit of a problem with the video camera recording then, so I've just edited it out, so that explains the skip.
It's probably the CIA trying to prevent Pete from getting his message out. Next.
I just want to say, this guy Bane has just gotten through complaining about women lying about MRAs, and he goes ahead and does exactly the same thing.
Actually, Pete, I wasn't complaining about women lying about MRAs. I was actually complaining about feminists lying about MRAs. Although it's true that Laurie Penny is both a woman and a feminist, Dave Futrell is most definitely not a woman. At least I hope not. Next.
And this is one reason why I don't identify myself as an MRA. MRAs, as a group, are absolutely just as willing to slander a man as feminists are.
You mean like claiming someone is working for the CIA, without the slightest bit of evidence? Is that the type of thing you are talking about, Pete? Next.
MRAs slander men left, right and centre, and they don't care. The other MRAs in the group don't care. Paul Elam has been slandering me for years, and now all the guys over at A Voice for Manginas call him their leader, and many of them donate money to him. The guy's a criminal slanderer, right? Lies about people for a living. Paul Elam has been well known to be an agent, government agent, for many, many years. I knew this, and now he's finally proving just what a government agent he is.
Sounds perfectly legit to me. Hey, why are you staring at my tinfoil fedora like that? Next.
If you ask Paul Elam, what is your proposal to sort out the issues of the rights violations of men, Paul Elam will tell you more government, right? Paul Elam will tell you What we're missing is an office for the rights of men. What we're missing is a Violence Against Men Act. What we're missing is more government involvement with men. That's what Paul Elam will tell you. Well, who the hell do you think he works for? Right? Who the hell does anybody now in 2015? I mean, I knew Paul Elam was a government agent way back at the time when Bernard Chapin was still writing on Men's News Daily. And I'm not sure if it's 2008 or 2009. Someone would have to remember that for me. It's a long time ago since Bernard Chapin was writing on Men's News Daily, right? And I knew Paul Elam was a government agent way back then. So here it is, 2015. You, young man, you go and ask Paul Elam directly in the comments on A Voice for Monkeys, A Voice for Anginas, what is your proposal for solving the issues that men's rights are violated routinely all through the Western world? And Paul Elam will tell you more government involvement. The government should fix this, right? Spin. Who do you think he works for? When the answer is the government should fix this, who do you think he works for other than the government? Give me a break. This is how, I mean, one of the reasons I do not identify myself as a men's rights activist is men's rights activists are stupid beyond all belief. Really. Men's rights activists are stupid beyond all belief because they actually think talking to politicians might do some good.
I kind of find it funny that Pete is criticizing us for trying to work through the government, considering he said this earlier in his video.
I am a life member of Men's Rights Fiji. I did write the proposal to the Fiji government on behalf of Men's Rights Fiji as to how Men's Rights Fiji wants to move forward. We do have now a member of parliament in Fiji. We do have a number of ex-members of parliaments who are members of Men's Rights Fiji. So I am indeed a life member of Men's Rights Fiji.
So let me get this straight. Pete's willing to work through the Fijian government, despite its corruption and military coups. But he thinks it's crazy to try to work through Western governments? Okay, got it. I would agree that it's somewhat pointless to just ask the government to change, but that doesn't mean that the government is incapable of change. What needs to happen is we need to change public opinion. We need to counter the 40-plus years of negative male stereotypes and female victim stereotypes, and get public opinion on our side. Once that happens, the politicians will simply follow the votes. Of course, getting public opinion on our side is so much harder when we have individuals like Crazy Pete, playing right into the feminist propaganda of the male victimizer and female victim. When he advocates the killing of women, he's actually justifying a system that sees men as the threat. He's effectively making our job harder. But go on, Pete, tell me again how I'm the government agent provocateur. Next.
Let that sink in for a minute. The vast majority of MRAs, their plan for solving the issue that men's rights are routinely violated is talking to politicians. That's their plan. Right? And then these same men get upset with me when I say, do you understand that you are incredibly stupid?
To be perfectly honest, I couldn't give a shit about Pete, or anyone else for that matter, calling me stupid. I do however have a problem with individuals like Pete throwing fuel onto the feminist propaganda machine, and making an already bad situation worse. Next.
Oh, how dare you call us stupid? We're really offended. We're really upset. Well, who does that sound like? Doesn't that sound just like a bunch of feminists? Don't dare call us hypocrites. Don't dare call us liars. We're really offended. We're really upset. Don't dare call us stupid. Don't dare call us liars. Don't dare call us slanderers. We're really upset. We're really offended. We're really upset.
There seems to be only one person who's really offended and really upset, Pete. Do you want to guess who that is? I'll give you a clue. It's not the skull in the jug taking the piss out of you. Next.
Seriously, it is difficult to tell from where I sit. It is very difficult to tell the difference between an MRA and a feminist. It's very difficult to tell. If you took the labels off and just looked at what they were writing, they're almost interchangeable.
Oh boy. This shit would be funny if there weren't people out there taking it seriously. I'm guessing most of you have heard of horseshoe theory. It's where two extreme and opposite political views turn out to be very similar. Like the ends of a horseshoe, although each end is on the opposite end of the horseshoe, they bend around and almost meet. This theory is usually used to describe the far left and the far right. But Pete is using it to describe feminists and men's rights activists. Which I find extremely funny because I think it better describes Pete and radical feminists. If we look at Pete's tweets about killing women being justified, they really aren't that different from radical feminist comments from RadFemHub. Or even from feminist law professor Elizabeth Sheehy. From the article, Prof makes bizarre plea to place battered women above the law. It seems to be the case with University of Ottawa law professor Elizabeth Sheehy, whose new book, Defending Battered Women on Trial, will be released December 15. Professor Sheehy's thesis is that women who experience extreme chronic abuse from their male partner should have the right to kill them preemptively, in their sleep, say, or when they least expect it, without fear of being charged with murder. Murder involves a mandatory minimum, 25 years for first-degree murder and 10 for second-degree, and this, according to Sheehy, constitutes a huge barrier to such women. Sheehy's solution is a statutory escape hatch that would preclude mandatory minimum sentences. In fact, Sheehy would prefer battered women be charged with manslaughter, in which case they could argue self-defense, without bearing the onerous consequence of failure. Why, she asks, should women live in anticipatory dread and hypervigilance? She likens such women to prisoners of war, and their lives with their abusers as a similar form of captivity. Just as it is the duty of prisoners of war to kill their captors in order to escape, she claims our attitude should be, you were right to kill to save your own life. So Sheehy has taken a real problem, women dying from domestic abuse, and used it to justify the killing of an entire gender without the trial or consequences that would happen under normal circumstances. So let's compare that to Pete and his tweets. Well, killing women is the only path to justice for men now. Perhaps you should have listened to me earlier. And men have killed a record number of women in Australia this year. Rightly, deservedly and justly so. Well done. So Pete has taken a real problem, men being chewed up and spat out by a corrupt family court, and used it to justify the killing of an entire gender without the trial or consequences that would happen under normal circumstances. Professor Elizabeth Sheehy and Peter Andrew Nolan copyrighted, are in fact the opposite sides of the same coin. Their rhetoric is basically the same, just focused on the opposite gender as the problem. Of course there is one glaring difference. Professor Elizabeth Sheehy still has her job, amazingly, and for some strange reason isn't seen as an extremist, while Pete is. I said, for some strange reason, but in truth the reason is pretty fucking obvious. And that is societal bias against males. So much for patriarchy theory. Professor Elizabeth Sheehy should not be able to get away with this type of shit, any more than Pete should, but because we have had 40+ years of feminist propaganda, telling all of us that males are a constant danger to any and all females, her bullshit is not only given a pass, but also promoted. And while some of us are trying to point out her bullshit, and bigotry, and double standards, Pete comes along with his poisonous tweets, and justifies those who would support Sheehy in her misandry. Which brings me to my next point. Can MRAs and feminists also be summed up by horseshoe theory? Are we just opposite sides of the same coin like Pete and the radfems? Well, let me point out one glaring difference before letting you make up your own minds. MRAs have been willing to criticize both Professor Elizabeth Sheehy and Peter Andrew Nolan copyrighted. Feminists on the other hand, are more than happy to criticize and condemn Crazy Pete, But I've never heard a single one criticize Professor Elizabeth Sheehy, at very least none in the media have. AVFM has criticized both. We Hunted the Mammoth on the other hand has been very silent on the topic of Professor Sheehy. Of course this is just one of many differences, but it is a very important one. Next.
Right? So I rebutted the article by Al Martin, a week or two after it came out. I can't remember exactly how long it was. It was a long time ago now, right?
Once again, this is irrelevant. The purpose of my use of the AVFM Al Martin article was to establish the men's rights movement's attitude towards Peter Andrew Nolan. And it did exactly that. Next.
So Al Martin, with the full blessing, of course, of the slanderous, criminal slanderous Dean Esme and the lying Dean Esme, Al Martin does a hatchet job on me, a bunch of lies, a bunch of slander, right? Well, isn't slander a violation of a man's right to the integrity of his reputation?
As someone who is part of a movement that routinely gets nothing but bullshit spread about it, I can testify that it's fucking annoying. But, part of presenting your opinion on the public stage is being criticized by others. So I guess the question then is, when does criticism become propaganda? Sometimes it's easy to tell the two apart, other times they blur together in the gray area. So was my video then propaganda or criticism? Well, considering I used numerous sources, including Peter Andrew Nolan's own words and video, I would claim criticism, but I'll let you make up your own minds. But the impression I get from Nolan is that while he feels perfectly free to criticize others, as he wishes, he considers any criticism he receives as slanderous attacks. This, of course, is all due to his massive ego. For example, using his own words, I created a remedy in 2008-9. Men rejected it. So men deserve what is happening to them. Not long ago I decided that I would offer leadership for the men's rights area for a limited time. It is obvious to me that there is no man in the world capable of being a leader of men's rights globally. There is simply not a willing man intelligent enough to do that job. If there was, he would have come forward by now and taken my work forward. My offer of providing the leadership necessary was not accepted. You can read the link below on Men's Rights Done Right. That is the post with the links to about 8 men's rights placeholder sites I created. When men in the MRA fathers' rights area are willing to do as they are told, then I will provide the leadership they so clearly cannot provide for themselves. But, quite frankly, since men are incredibly stupid and will not take good advice, I do not think that they will do as they are told anytime soon. The next step in men's rights and fathers' rights is simply this. These men need to shut up and stop talking. They need to do as I tell them to do. And then we will settle these matters very quickly. I have talked to men about these issues far longer than was even sensible. It is clear men do not want to listen. It is clear men are too stupid to shut up and listen. So they need to be further criminally victimized until they realize that they are too stupid to listen. When they are ready to pay me to tell them what to do, I will still be around. I am one of the easiest guys in the world to find online, right? Shut up and stop talking? Do as they are told? Fucking hell, Pete sounds just like a feminist. I think it's fairly safe to say that Peter Andrew Nolan has a bit of a god complex. He's not willing to work with others, unless they follow his orders. He's not interested in hearing others' ideas or opinions, because he already has all the answers, apparently. And of course, any criticism is some government plot to stop him, because, clearly he is a threat to the entire system, as opposed to being a fucking joke. And let's not forget, this is a man who said, Warren Farrell is a man I despise. If I met Warren Farrell, I would gladly pull a gun out and blow him away. I would not bat an eyelid in doing so. If any man in the manosphere deserves summary execution, it is Warren Farrell. To my knowledge, Warren Farrell has never mentioned Nolan. So I would recommend taking Nolan's advice, and tell you not to judge him by the Al Martin AVFM piece. It's far better if you read Nolan's own words, filled with his ego, paranoia, and threats of violence, and make up your own minds. Next.
Isn't lying about somebody in public a crime? Isn't slandering somebody with the specific intent of causing injury and harm to their reputation and thence financial loss, isn't that a crime?
If that's the case, Pete, you could always take AVFM to court. I suspect, though, that you know damn well you wouldn't have a case. Next.
And the answer is, of course it's a crime. There's a book with it written down. It's called the Bible. It says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor." It's only 4,000 years old.
Yep. The Bible also says that anyone who works on a Saturday should be stoned to death. Strangely, I don't see anyone following that part. Next.
You'd have thought that MRAs would have read that passage by now, right? You would have thought that if you called yourself a men's rights activist, you would know that slandering another man is a crime which should be remedied.
Oh, okay, so only slandering another man counts. And of course it doesn't count when Peter Andrew Nolan does it, of course, only when other men do it. Let me make this simple for you, Pete. When I criticize someone, I really don't give two shits if they are male, female, trans, hermaphrodite, or whatever. All I care about is the quality of their argument. I've criticized more than a few female feminists in my time. Are you honestly suggesting, Pete, that I should give the male feminists a free pass because they are fellow members of the Dangle Club? Does their testicles make their arguments immune from criticism? Should we just ignore them and give them free rein to say whatever they wish without response? Of course we fucking shouldn't. Which is why I've taken on Jeff Charlotte, James Fell, Dave Futrell, Steve Shives, Kevin Logan and many others in this series, and other videos. And just as they don't get a free pass because they have penises, neither the fuck do you. Once again, Peter Andrew Nolan is arguing like a feminist. Arguing immunity from criticism based on gender. Fuck that. Your arguments either stand or fall on their own merit. Next.
You would imagine MRAs would know that, right? But apparently they don't. Apparently, men's rights activists think it's okay to lie about people and it's okay to slander people, specifically other men.
Okay, so just let me be clear about this once again. I encourage all of you to go and read Peter Andrew Nolan's own words, and to watch his videos, like the one I'm replying to, and make up your own minds. We don't need to make up lies, because Pete's really good at discrediting himself. But what do I know? I'm just a CIA plant. Next.
Now, let me see. I wonder, who else lies about people? Who else slanders people in the popular culture today?
Ooh, can I guess this one? Is it Peter Andrew Nolan copyrighted? Do I win a prize? Next.
Oh, that would be right. Feminists lie about men. Feminists slander men in the popular culture today, and the men are really upset. And the exact same men, calling themselves MRAs, calling themselves Paul Elam, Dean Esme, Al Martin, these exact same men who object to being lied about, turn around and lie about another man.
The problem we have here is one man's criticism is another man's slander. I would agree that there is a massive problem with online journalists, who play fast and loose with the truth, either through ideological corruption, or laziness and stupidity. An even bigger problem is the general public, who are more interested in a juicy lie, than listening to a boring truth. But these are all consequences of having an open forum of debate and free speech. If we restrict speech, then we are potentially restricting the good along with the bad, and who decides what's good or bad in any case? But if we have unrestricted speech, then we will have people abusing it to purposely spread falsehoods, or who do so out of ignorance. Of course, free speech also allows the right of reply, which this entire series is based upon. Something Nolan is also familiar with. So once again, dear viewer, don't take my word for it, by all means listen to Nolan's own words and make up your own minds. Is this man our savior, here to show us the way to a masculine utopia, or just a paranoid crackpot with a god complex? You decide for yourselves. Next.
And then And then everybody else says, oh, that's okay. He's just a man that's been lied about. But you feminists, stop lying about us. We're really upset that you're lying about us, but we're going to lie about this guy over here and he should just tolerate it and put up with it. I mean, people ask me, why don't you identify as an MRA? Good Lord, look how these men behave. I don't want to be tarred with the same brush as these men. And they say, well, I don't want to be tarred with the same brush as Joshua Baum. I don't want to be tarred with the same brush as Peter Nolan. I say to that, thank goodness they don't want to be tarred with the same brush as me. Give me a break. I mean, these guys who call themselves MRAs, these are the same guys who say, we do not condone violence in any shape or form. Oh, Mr. Taxman, you want some money to pay criminal soldiers for a criminal government to go to the Middle East and kill innocent men, women, and children? Sure, Mr. Taxman, here's my money. You send those soldiers overseas, you go kill those people because they're the bad people, and I'm with you, Mr. Government. Now, what was I saying? Oh, that's right. I don't condone violence under any conditions. Yeah, really. MRAs take money, and they give it to criminals in government to pay criminals called soldiers to go to foreign lands to kill innocent men, women, and children with highly advanced weapons of very violent destruction, you know, bombs and bullets and things like that. They pay money to do that, and then they turn around and say, I don't condone violence in any way, shape, or form. Really, I don't. I'm a saint. I don't condone violence, but I do pay for criminals to go kill other people with highly advanced, highly violent, highly deadly technology. But we're not going to talk about that because that just makes me look stupid. That's worse than hypocrisy. I mean, it is so much worse than hypocrisy. The fact that so many MRAs pay taxes and claim they never condone violence, that's beyond hypocrisy. I don't know what word is appropriate, right? Idiot comes to mind.
What about the word context? Although I would agree that there is need for reasonable criticism of both the police and the military, that doesn't change the fact that both are needed. Should we have just let Hitler run amok across Europe? Should we encourage the next want-to-be Hitler to do as he or she pleases? The military is a necessity. And the same could be said about the police. I would totally agree that the actions of the police should be scrutinized, but that doesn't mean the police aren't a real necessity. Imagine for a moment that a radfem sees Peter Nolan's tweets on the internet, and decides that for the safety of women everywhere, that she was going to murder Looney Pete. Would Pete condone her violence? Or would he expect the police to use violence to protect him? Next.
That's worse than it. That is beyond hypocrisy. Those same men, oh, what do they do with the local police force? The local police. What do these men do with the local police? When the local police come, you know, when the local city taxes, the city tax man comes around and says, I would like some of your tax money, some of your money as taxes, because I'm going to go and give it to these local police. And what these local police do is when a woman commits perjury and calls them to the house of a man, they beat the crap out of the man and drag him off and put him in a cage.
I would totally agree that there are many women out there abusing the system, and that the system is stacked against men. But the reason for this is 40+ years of propaganda telling us that men are dangerous, mindless, thugs, whose only desires are to hurt women. And that women are always the victims and never the perpetrators. So how does Peter Andrew Nolan fight this propaganda? Why, of course, he does everything in his power to justify it, by acting exactly like the negative male stereotype, while promoting the female victim narrative. In other words, Pete's idea of how to put out a fire, is to back a petrol tanker up to it, and start pumping as much gas on it as possible. And when others point out the insanity of his actions, he doubles down, because there is no way Peter Andrew Nolan could ever be wrong. So let's be clear here, Peter Andrew Nolan is not the enemy of feminism, he is their fucking wet dream. He is the poster child of every fucking negative male stereotype they can think of, he is the justification of their hatred and demonization of males, and he is the excuse for harsher anti-male laws. Dave Futrell must think Nolan is the best thing to happen to feminist propaganda in a decade. Next.
Right? That's what happens when women, oh, I'm so afraid of my husband, can you please come and arrest him and beat him up and throw him in a cage? You men pay for that.
And your tweets justify it, you idiot. You are helping our opposition to promote this stereotype. Next.
You men pay for that, right? It's called taxes. You pay taxes for that. And then you go, oh, let me polish my halo. Let me polish my halo. I never condone violence. I'm one of the good men. I never condone violence. Oh, Mr. Police Officer, it's payday. Here, have some money. By all means, go into a man's house and beat the crap out of him. By all means, enforce child support payments, right? Lock men up who don't pay child support payments. By all means, do that.
I totally agree that there are some major problems within the system. But once again, the actions of Peter Andrew Nolan is only giving ammunition to those who have helped create the system. He is making a very bad situation worse. Now if he wants to stop paying taxes, because he doesn't like how that money is used, fine, that's an issue between himself and the government to work out. However, when his idiotic tweets make it harder to change that broken system, then I have an issue. That's simple. Next.
Right? Give me a break. I never condone violence. I just pay cops to throw my brothers in jail. I pay army guys lots of money to go kill people. But I'm going to claim with a straight face that I don't condone violence. And people ask me, why don't I want to be tarred with that brush? Me? I condone violence. I condone lots of violence, right?
And that's exactly the issue.
There's lots of different types of violence and lots of different instances where violence is used, but I absolutely condone it, right? Look, hand up, hands up, absolutely, hand on heart, whatever you want to say. I absolutely condone violence. I absolutely condone the use of force, up to and including deadly force, where the man sees fit to use that deadly force. I absolutely condone that, right?
Where the man sees fit to use the deadly force. Really? So Elliot Rodger or Jack the Ripper were justified in their actions then? Because they felt like it? Really? Okay, let's be charitable towards Pete for a moment, and assume he means only those men who have been fucked over by the system. You know, someone who's been to court, lost his kids, lost his home, and is left gutted. Is Pete really suggesting that this man should be able to kill his ex-wife? What about his kids? Should he be able to kill them too, if he sees fit? After all, it's up to the man to decide, right? That's what Pete's telling us. What about his lawyer? If he thinks his lawyer was a bit dodgy and let him down in court, should he be able to kill him or her too? What about the judge? Where do we draw the line, Pete? Is there even a line if we leave it up to an individual to decide when it's appropriate? And why would this apply to only males? If a woman is raped, should she be able to circumvent the justice system and kill the man responsible? What about an abusive husband? That's what feminist Professor Elizabeth Sheehy wants. Of course, no actual evidence of abuse needed. Just a woman's word. And I'm sure the abuse wouldn't necessarily even have to be physical. What if she just felt abused? Is that reason enough? What an incredibly slippery slope we have here. Where violence is justified, not on the individual circumstances of the case, but on the feelings of those committing the violence. And isn't it amazing how much Pete sounds exactly like a feminist extremist? Both justifying gender-specific murder, both using gender issues to justify it. Both reprehensible monsters in my book. Violence against another person should only be a last resort, and used in self-defense. And no one should get a free pass based on their gender. If you use violence against another person, you'd better not only have a good reason, but be willing to prove it in a court of law. Now I should point out, as I also stated in episode 35, that I'm not surprised that some men are so broken by the system, that they resort to violence. I'm not justifying their actions, let me be clear about that, but I'm not surprised either. And obviously we need to fix a broken system which is extremely harmful to many men, and by extension their ex-wives and kids. The reason this broken system is allowed to exist, is because of the lack of sympathy towards men. The root cause of this lack of sympathy can be tied to male disposability, but, in the last 40+ years of feminist propaganda, it's been expanded to a whole new extreme. Every male is dangerous. Every male is a threat. Every male is violent. And of course females could never be guilty of these things. This is largely why we, as a society, ignore male victims of domestic abuse. Because we have had 40+ years of being told that the male is always the abuser, and the female is always the victim. This propaganda war is the reason why men are being fucked over in the family courts, not to mention in other areas. It's the justification of not only fucking men over, but not giving a shit about our issues as well. After all, why would anyone have any sympathy for the villain? Of course our opposition will claim that the family court system is the result of traditional patriarchal values, while ignoring feminist organizations like NOW, who actively work against fathers' rights. So what's the solution? Simple, we fight propaganda with the truth. We show that men are more than villains, and females are more than male victims. We expose lies, and change public opinion. And in time this will filter through to the government and the legal system. You have to think of the government as a massive slow-moving ship. It is capable of being steered, but changing its course does take time and effort. Just ask the LGBT community, it took them decades to get gay marriage legalized. And I'm sure that fight is far from over. But it took a change in public opinion to change government opinion. Because in a democracy, government opinion will change with whatever direction the wind blows. If the general public reaches a tipping point, where the majority is in favor of gay marriage, then gay marriage will be legalized. If on the other hand things were to revert back, and the majority of the population were to be against gay marriage, the politicians would follow suit. Gay marriage might have been always constitutionally legal, but without public support, it wasn't going to see the light of day. So let's be straight here, we as men's rights activists are very much fighting a propaganda war, one in which our opponents have had a massive head start. And if this series has taught you anything, it should be that they don't play fair. But you know what? That's fine by me, because our best weapons are facts, logic, and the truth. And every time one of them uses straw man arguments, or falsely associates someone with us, or makes up outright lies, every time they do that shit, they give me the opportunity to expose their propaganda. It gives me the opportunity to compare their bullshit to the real issues. It gives me the opportunity to advance the movement, the rights of men, and to rehabilitate the battered image of men and masculinity. But then a total fuckwit like Peter Andrew Nolan comes along, and makes horrendous statements that justify every fucking negative thing our enemy has said about males and masculinity. Nolan is not the norm, thank God, but he is the feminist poster child for toxic masculinity. He is exactly what they like to paint us as. Exactly what they want us to be, to justify their hatred and misandry. Peter Andrew Nolan copyrighted is in no way a solution, he's part of the fucking problem. But please, don't take my word for it, go check him out yourselves, and make up your own minds. Needless to say, I've already made up mine. But what do I know, I'm just an undercover CIA agent, working for the Elaminati, trying to protect the bodily integrity of infant males. Anyway, That's it, folks. I only got through about 25 minutes of Pete's 1 hour and 16-minute rant. If you want to see me dissect the rest, comment below, but to be honest, he doesn't really say anything different for the rest of it. Feel free to go to his video, link below as always, and watch the rest. If there is anything in particular you think needs to be addressed, timestamp it in my comments. But I get the feeling you guys have probably had enough Nolan to last a long time. I know I have. So until next time, folks, don't drink the poison Kool-Aid. That's both feminist flavored and Nolan flavored Kool-Aid, because both are fucking toxic.
Because when I was a boy, there were these men in our society called Anzacs, because I come from Australia, and these were our returned servicemen, and we treated them as the heroes they were. And virtually every single one of them had committed acts of violence. Almost all of them, right? Almost all of them. And they were heroes, and we loved them, and we honoured them, and we respected them, and they were extraordinarily violent people. Extraordinarily violent. My own step-grandfather, Frank Trainer, bless his heart, killed people. He killed people, right? He was a very, very violent man, right? The greatest man I've ever known was a man who killed people. Attempting to say to me, "Oh, Peter, you condone violence. That's bad." Well, you're a taxpayer. At least I'm not a stupid hypocrite, right? I couldn't possibly be as stupid as the average MRA, and I couldn't possibly be as big a hypocrite as the average MRA, and that's why I don't identify as one. Peter Nolan, Joshua Baum, absolutely, totally, utterly, completely endorse the use of force and violence at the opinion of the man that's dispensing it. That's the only criteria that I would put on it. If the man who is going to be moved to violence, up to and including deadly violence, if he thinks it's a good idea, then it is a good idea. And what's to do is men should show some judgment in that area, right? Men should show judgment and restraint in the use of deadly force. That doesn't mean they shouldn't ever do it. It means they should show judgment and restraint. Try all other peaceful means first, but never take deadly force off the table. George Bush himself and Barack Obama have said, all options are on the table. Well, they're no better than I am, right? In fact, I'm way better than George Bush and Barack Obama. I'm not a lying scumbag, which of course both of those guys were. So yeah, let it be known, I'm absolutely in favour of the use of force and violence. I'm absolutely in favour of the use of deadly force where necessary, at the judgment of the man who is dispensing it. And I'm absolutely for men showing a little bit of judgment and restraint in such situations, right? Trying all other alternative mechanisms to establish the peace, re-establish the peace first in a case of conflict. And I'll tell you, it's on my stories of my life, I'll tell you this, all you so-called MRAs who think I'm giving you a bad reputation when the opposite is true. On my very first day of school, I was 5 years old and 2 weeks. I was like 5 years and 2 weeks. I was born on the 11th of January, and we start school towards the end of January in Australia. And on my first day of school, I come into the schoolyard, and what do I find? I find a boy, his name was Anthony,